and welcome back to the SKOL Cast, where we are two brothers who enjoy talking football and are Vikings fans. And so we spend most of our time talking about the Vikings, hashing the Vikings, grieving the Vikings. And today, if you missed it, in our last episode, we introduced Season 2. You can go back and watch that episode. I'll link it in the description below. But we just had reflection on the preseason training camp, how it's gone so far as we anticipate the season starting next week already. In this episode, we want to dive into what happened at the end of the kind of fairy tale. Would you call last season fairy tale? Like, it was fairy tale in the sense of it went better than we expected.
For sure.
It wasn't fairy tale in the sense that everything went right, But we're going to evaluate things. Minnesota fights for first place in the conference and gets blown out. The end score
Week 8
was worse than it actually looked for most of the game. Like I believe it was still within 3 points leading into the last third. What is it? Last 5 minutes of the third quarter, and then Detroit started pulling away, and so Minnesota drops to Detroit. They end up needing to play the next week, and then they get blown out by the Rams to end their season. And so, for as good as the season was, they won 14 games. Sam Darnold was really good, better than what people expected. The defense was strong, a top 5 defense, which we pretty much thought they would be by the end of the year. For as good as everything was, it was just this embarrassing collapse. And so in this episode, we're going to kind of dissect that a little bit. What went wrong and what do we hope to see changed? And now that we've seen preseason, we've seen their off-season moves. By the way, since the time of our last recording, there have been some trades done that we know the quarterback room is set, but there's a couple positions we're still like, what's going on with wide receiver depth, cornerback depth? We're anticipating more trades before the season starts just because of some of the trades that Kwesi has done, trading away Harrison Phillips. I think that happened since our last recording.
Yeah.
And trading away Sam Howell, getting some 6th-round picks for both of those. Did they get a 5th round for Howell?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I think it was like a conditional 5th round from Philly.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, obviously they're prepping for something. Hopefully they're not going into the season just leaving some of these positions thin. But for the most part, we can see what they've developed, what they've corrected in the offseason, and then how that went in training camp and preseason. And so do we think there's going to be a change here? Yeah, let's just dive in. Christopher, I'll let you start. When you reflect back on that Lions game, was that January 5th? It was January something. And then the Rams game. What are your thoughts? What are things where does the blame lie? What happened? The Lions game, just to set the stage a little bit further, the Lions game in the middle of the season was really close. They won by a field goal. And won by 2 points. Like, they were down by 1 and kicked a field goal. And I think had Darnold had an interception in that game. I can't remember, but yeah. The final game of the season was not near as close. Why wasn't that what happened?
Yeah, sorry. Before I get into that, some breaking news. It won't be breaking by the time this episode releases, but the Minnesota Vikings have traded for Adam Thielen.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I have been refreshing my internet Twitter page waiting for this.
To Adam Schefter like 10 minutes ago.
So it actually did happen. What did they give for it?
Panthers get a 5th round and a 26 5th round and a 27 4th round, and the Vikings get Thielen. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the time this episode releases, that'll be old news, but that's interesting. It definitely affects our conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
Last year in Detroit, excuse me. I mean, I think if you followed any of the Vikings offseason moves, you're probably well aware of, like, Kevin O'Connell came out after the game and was like straightforward. He's like, we need to, I forget how he phrased it, but basically we need to improve our O-line. And I think that kind of, like, a lot of the weaknesses of, I guess that was after the Rams game. I'm thinking kind of the very end of the season. Yeah. That I guess the Detroit game, man, I am converging those two games now. Detroit was very much kind of a Sam Darnold what people say blue screen of death kind of game. I think was it that game or was that the Rams game? I'm mixing the two up now.
No, yeah. Yeah, to set the stage, like Sam Darnold, which I was surprised. I remember being surprised about this stat going into the Detroit game. Sam Darnold held the ball. Well, I can't remember if it was the longest of all the current starting quarterbacks, but it was one of the longest. He was known for taking a fair amount of sacks, for holding the ball long.
Mm-hmm.
But under the blitz, he was the best. I forget completion percentage or passer rating or whatever. Like under the blitz, he was incredible. And we saw it. I don't know if you remember that Seattle game. I think it would have been 2 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
Where he was phenomenal. They were blitzing him and he did really well. Even Green Bay brought a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But what's his name? The defensive coordinator of the Lions. Why can't I remember his name now? Aaron Glenn, yeah. And
Aaron Glenn, yeah.
Like they threw the whole.
Yeah.
They were leaving like 3 or 4 players in the back to guard the receivers, and they were rushing everybody at Darnold, and it just created that seeing ghosts kind of
Yeah. It was definitely a thing where Detroit, the division rival, played them earlier in the year. I think kind of exposed some things for Sam Darnold. And yeah, I remember the receivers being wide open and Darnold just like missing them. And
Jefferson had a rare drop in that game.
Yeah.
I think it was his only drop of the whole season in the end zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was just some real pivotal, like I think we drove down the field a couple of times, should have been able to punch it in, and then it was just nothing. And the defense was playing decently well, but then at some point they just couldn't hang on, and Detroit kind of ran away with it.
Yeah, Goff, just to throw this in as well for context, Goff did not have necessarily a very good game. Jahmyr Gibbs eventually took off and had a pretty good game, but it was very close through 2/3 of that game. It was still anybody's game. It felt like it wasn't going to be the Vikings because of how Darnold was playing. Like things just weren't going well. They should have been up by a score or two, and like you said, throwing over people, or Jefferson had to drop, and it was just not looking like what we had seen even against the Lions before.
31-9 was the final score. I forgot that it was. I hadn't actually pulled up the game. I forgot it was that bad.
But it was. I mean, that looks really bad.
Right.
I want to say it was 10-9 with 5 minutes left in the third quarter, but I could be wrong on that. Do you have the box score?
Yeah, 0-7 first quarter, 6-3 end of second quarter going into the half. So it was 10-6. They didn't score a single touchdown, and then it was 17-13. So, I mean, going into the fourth quarter, the game was within reach, and then they scored 2 touchdowns.
13. What do you mean?
I'm sorry, 17-9.
Yeah. So maybe we need to just take both games in conjunction, because when we watch that, like, my criticisms of the coaching staff come largely after what the Lions did was put on tape. Like, you should have expected, now that the Lions exposed, and I was pretty sure watching that game, I was like, they're playing their Super Bowl. I did not expect the Lions to be able to go on. And largely because the Lions were so thin defensively.
Yeah.
They had to do that. They had to blitz. And once everybody knew what they were going to be doing, Jaden Daniels was obviously ready for that and had a phenomenal game against them the next week and blew them out to knock them out of the playoffs. But my disappointment with the coaching staff of the Vikings was that they go into that game against the Rams, and it didn't look like they were prepared for the blitz. Like, it didn't look like they had any game plan for what to do, and they should have known that was going to happen. But to back up to the Lions game a little bit, did Aaron Glenn out-coach Kevin O'Connell? Is that what happened? Obviously, he gets a head coaching job. So a lot, like, even though the Lions defense is not that good, they have perhaps the best defensive player in the NFL. He was injured last year, but they're not top of the league in any specific metric. But the way they ended their season, the Vikings season, and beating out for the first seed, that kind of got Aaron Glenn on the map, got them on as, obviously Ben Johnson was very much on the map with his offensive schemes. Like, were they out coached? Was it a collapse on Darnold's part? Like, Darnold just fell apart, and it's kind of an example of how Kevin O'Connell can only do so much, but depending on what you do in the moment. Was it a lack of scheme on KOC's part, that there wasn't more rushing, that they didn't do better? I remember,
Yeah.
I think Cam Akers had a fairly significant, a
65
couple
yards.
explosive plays. Yeah, I guess kind of as you reflect on, even before we get to the Rams game, is there criticisms of O'Connell that should have been addressed, or even of Flores? But I personally don't put a lot of blame on Flores for the Lions game, because when the defense keeps your team in there that long,
Right.
if the offense isn't doing anything, eventually it's going to catch up and the other team's offense is going to break loose. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the Lions game, I remember thinking this last year, like kind of walking away and thinking the Lions game was, I think, primarily just a fault of the personnel and the quarterback. I think if there would be one criticism, and like, if this doesn't happen this year, then I think I would be pretty critical of Kevin O'Connell. I mean, there's a lot of things that would go into whether or not I think this is a bad thing this year, but like, not having a well-established rushing part of the offense to me was a weakness in that game, but not the primary weakness. Like I think if Sam Darnold would have had a little bit more decisiveness throughout the whole year, but especially in that game, I think it would have come out differently. And like you said, like 17 going into the fourth quarter, 17-9, that game is very much in reach. All you need is a touchdown and a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was like defensively, I think they were same old Vikings. Like, I don't know that we can really pin anything on them, but yeah, just the inability. Yeah, I think, I don't know, to kind of sum that all up, I don't know that I would pin the blame on the coaching staff as much as the way the roster was structured, with kind of a weak O-line, a really weak O-line, and we didn't have Darisaw. That's not on really anybody. The state of the O-line towards the end of the year was just weakened because Darisaw had gotten injured. And then our running backs were like Aaron Jones, who had kind of been struggling all year with just load management type stuff, because he's older. He had a good year, but he just was clearly where the season was wearing on him. And Cam Akers played fine, but he couldn't carry the whole. So I think what I'm saying is, like, first and foremost, if Darnold would have made those completions, like, he was 18 for 41. If he would have made those completions, and I think some of that is his own blue screen of death seeing ghosts, and some of that is that he didn't have any sort of help against that blitz,
Yeah. There was also a lot of, and this is not why the Vikings lost. If they would have played a competitive, and you're going to see this in big stakes games, I think I prefer refs letting players play. But the Lions were very touchy on the receivers, and there were a lot in, obviously as a Vikings fan, looked at that as like there were missed PIs. So I'm not saying that to bear blame of that, like, oh, because of the missed PIs, Vikings would have won if it wasn't that way. I have more of a gripe with that call of the strip sack against Stafford. We'll talk about that in a bit. But when guys are covered and the defenders are that much in your receiver's face, it's hard. Like, you're not going to throw at, you're not going to be as comfortable throwing at them. So a lot of, not only was the blitz coming, but then their I guess it was cornerbacks, but those protecting the receivers or guarding the receivers were covering them fairly heavily. Although I do remember, like, there was a pass to Addison, I think, where he was wide open in the corner of the end zone and it sailed over him. So yeah, some of that stuff was just Sam Darnold because, and that's the other thing. Darnold had a beautiful deep ball, and we remember in week 2 against the Niners, he throws that. I think it was like 50-some yard air ball to Jefferson. Jefferson takes it for 97 yards as a touchdown. Like, he was really good with stuff like that, but he did not do well at mid-range passes.
Yeah.
And if you remember the Chicago game I can't remember if it was the one which one was first, in Minnesota or in Chicago, but I'm pretty sure it was the one in Minnesota. They shut down. Like, it looked as though their goal was to shut down the deep ball. And they forced Darnold to throw mid-range balls, and he had a poor completion percentage in that game. Minnesota still won. Chicago was weak enough offensively and even defensively that they beat that game. But I remember watching that game and realizing, like, this is, if people are watching how to shut down this offense, Chicago just set a blueprint because you force the mid-range throws. Darnold can't do that. He's not very good at that, which, to jump ahead a little bit, makes me excited to see a couple things. That's something McCarthy's really good at, is the mid-range ball. And his deep ball is not as bad as people thought it was either. Training camp has shown he's got a pretty nice deep ball as well.
Yeah. Sorry. Bumped my mic. I was thinking the same thing, just about McCarthy being able. Colin Cowherd had like stupid criticisms of McCarthy because Colin Cowherd doesn't know anything about local teams.
Or he's also a big Darnold. He's a big Darnold fan.
He thinks
and
the
so
Vikings
I think he
he's been a big Darnold fan, I think, since Darnold was drafted, and so he has a lot of stock in Darnold and has to keep that stock high. But it was weird because all of the beat guys, local guys, were saying, like, McCarthy's arm looks great. It looks strong. Colin, and then you turn to Colin on national platforms and he's like, guys, doesn't have a strong arm, whatever. But the thing that McCarthy does have is he has like a zip to those mid-range throws. And that is, I mean, you think about it, the Jaguars game last year, I think it was the Jaguars, where they like drove down the field 4 times, and was it 4 times or 3 times?
4 times.
And they all.
That guy, I forget his name, but he came in because Reichert was injured, and he kicked 4 field goals.
That's right. Yeah, because they didn't necessarily. And then there were also a couple interception, or maybe 1 interception, but
3, I think. Yeah,
3 interceptions.
Well, 2. I think it was 2 in the red zone. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was like the I remember thinking, like, the Vikings are hot because they kept just driving down the field, and then they get in the end zone and Darnold would stall out. And so I think, and then also, was it that game where Aaron Jones dropped one? But I just remember, I think that was a turning point because O'Connell just didn't trust Aaron Jones, and oftentimes having those running backs be able to, like, pick up short yardage in the red zone is important.
Yeah. John Parker Romo came in for just a few weeks while Reichert was injured, and his first game, he kicks 4 field goals. They win 12-7, I think. It was a pretty bad game.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of, when I look at that Lions game, I tip my cap to the Lions. They brought a scheme that nobody was expecting.
Yeah.
How many people, when you have a really injured defense, especially your defensive line, how many people are going to expect you to then blitz and throw the whole book? They exposed Darnold.
Yeah.
And I do think there are things that could have made it better. O'Connell could have had a stronger run game. You have some rare things like Jefferson dropping a pass. The Lions shut down the deeper balls, forced Darnold to play mid-range, and he's not good at that. But so that's humiliating. They lose 31-9, so it just looks like Detroit is dominating. It looks like this is Detroit's year. They're going to go.
It was so deflating too, because it was the Packers game where Darnold comes back and they like put them on the shoulders, and
That's
there's
right.
water
Yeah.
bottles getting dumped, and it was so exciting. And everyone was like, "Oh, this is their Super Bowl." And
Yeah.
so we're like, "No, we have a proven record over this season. We're gonna go in and." I mean, that's what should have happened. As Vikings fans, we're super pessimistic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at that point, like Darnold had a really good December. You
Yeah.
had that game. If anything, the defense looked a little iffy. You wondered if the defense is as good as it was because they were up. I want to say 3 touchdowns. Again, I could be wrong, but I think they were up 3 touchdowns against the Packers. And then by the end of the game, it was I think they won by 2 points. So the Packers came back and made it close. But and Darnold had that game against the Seahawks where he's scrambling and throwing darts into the end zone to Jefferson and Addison, and it just looked really good. It looked like you had a complete package, and then everything just falls apart. Heading into the Rams game, again for context, it was played in Arizona because the fires were going on in LA. And so you have the Rams, who should have been, in theory, haggard, not very well prepped because not only was the week disrupted because of the fires, so their practice and preparation wasn't like it maybe would have typically been, but then they did the game in a different location, and so they have to travel as well. They no longer have the home game, and yet that game from the get-go looked like Minnesota was the one with dealing with disrupted schedules and seemed to be zero adjustments for what you knew the Rams were going to be bringing in the blitz package. And that's where that game is when, so Teresa's like, me and the boys enjoy watching football, and most of the season I would either watch it myself or listen to it on my phone. But towards the end, when things were looking really good and up, the boys started watching with me. And then those final 2 games, Teresa decided she's going to take up knitting
No,
and sit
not
down
the
and
not
watch it
the
with us.
not the 2 worst games of the year.
It was horrible. And especially, like, I just remember sitting there and my boys are like speaking death over the situation. They're like in the first quarter, like, oh, the Vikings are going to lose, aren't they? And I'm sitting there like, man, this just does not look anything like I've been talking to the family about.
Yeah.
Now they're watching, and it's like, okay, Dad's a little over the top here. What are your I mean, we've already kind of touched on it, but what were your thoughts as you watched the final playoff game then against the Rams?
Well, I don't know that I had many thoughts while I watched it other than, of course, this is how
What
it ends. I remember, it's just that feeling of like, as a Vikings fan, it's like, of course it ends this way. It's like, that's like being dramatic, and it's Vikings fans trauma and things that I hate and push against in this fan base, and then you just walk away and you're like, yeah, but it's still true. And it's like,
those
it's not like a
old lies
hard
reinforced?
fought nail biter kind of heartbreaking end. It's just embarrassment. It's just, they didn't even show up.
Yeah.
Which is how, like, you have to understand with, like, I know every sports fan says that they have trauma, blah, 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 blah. And it is true. But our type of sports trauma is that we just, embarrass ourselves on national television. That's how our Super Bowls went, a bunch of them. That's how some of our NFC championships went. Obviously, we have some decent NFC championships, but it's just always this like stupid way of losing. And so when we talk about, it's just like, oh yeah, of course it's the Vikings, this is how it always ends. Like, it's difficult to describe how just like embedded that is into your psyche when you get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then we have the Minneapolis Miracle, which is an incredible playoff moment. And then we have 28-7 against the Eagles, who went on to win the Super Bowl. So it's just like every single time, it's just this. So that's what I was feeling and thinking. I wasn't really thinking too much about the game itself, but I do remember kind of reflecting on it and listening to people after the season last year. And yeah, I think it was that Vikings game, especially, where I was much more critical of the coaching staff for similar reasons that you said. There is like this thing of like, I know that we had a good December, but I also just feel like every single year of Kevin O'Connell's tenure has just ended in these kind of pathetic ways. Obviously, his 2023 season kind of fizzled out very, very slowly because we didn't even make the playoffs. And we had like Kirk Cousins was out and Kirk Cousins was on a heater. I honestly think we would have hit like 11, 12 wins that year if Kirk Cousins had stayed in.
Yeah.
And the year before that, it was more the defense kind of flopped. So there's reasons that you could explain it away, but there is just this feeling of like, I just want to end on a high note. I know you can't end on a high note in sports because even if you have an incredible year, unless you win the championship, you're going to walk away being like, that was a bummer, because you're going to lose.
Yeah.
You're going to get eliminated. But I just want to walk away and be like, yeah, that was hard fought. They fought till the end. The other team was just a better team. Like, I just want to be able to say that. The other team was just a better team.
Yeah.
And not
that
have
Giants game.
Yeah. The Giants were not a better team. You can see it from how the two franchises have progressed from that game. That game gave Daniel Jones a massive contract, and Daniel Jones is on his third team.
And to be fair, the Rams were the closest contenders to the Eagles last year in the playoffs,
sure.
like even compared to the Super Bowl. Like, so the Rams probably were a better team. It didn't feel like they were that much of a better team, to your point. But yeah.
Yeah. And I also yeah. So yeah, I think there's a dynamic of walking away feeling like this year is going to depend a lot more on the coaching. And I say that knowing that we essentially have a rookie quarterback. Like,
don't you think that's why though? Like this is kind of the prove it year in my opinion. Sorry, you were in the middle of a thought. I'm going to throw a question at you here, but I'll let you finish your thought.
Yeah, I don't know that I had much more to the thought. I think yeah, it's just statistically unlikely that a first year starter, will go to a Super Bowl. And I would think in order for me to be like feel like progress was made, we would have to at least win, a playoff game. And I think that that's doable.
Playoff when it matters. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause like it's kind of, it's kind of like the criticisms of Tomlin, who's, always had a winning season. He's been coaching for 20 plus years or whatever it is. And if I was a Steelers fan, I would feel so frustrated because I would feel like I'm in this like endless loop of he's an incredible coach, but then they don't win when it matters. And I just don't want to be in that loop. And I feel like after, what is it? Is this the fourth year with Kevin O'Connell?
He's heading into his fourth.
Okay. Yeah. With Kevin O'Connell, a fourth year of great regular season and then a flop in the playoffs. Even if there's all these reasons we could point to, it would feel kind of sad.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I am, like last year, I was a big fan of O'Connell and very much thought he deserved every bit of the coach of the year. And I still do. I am still a big fan of Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores. I think they are, when it's all said and done, will be reflected back on as one of the best head coach and assistant coach duos and coordinators of their time. Kevin O'Connell has won a Super Bowl as a coordinator. He's done wonders with backup or mediocre QBs. But I do very much feel for myself, I have a microscope or some heat on Kevin O'Connell's back in the sense that I think either this year vindicates as like, yes, things are progressing well. It's been building for something. He just, in 20 with the Giants, they had a defense like butter. Like, people could just go right down through them and score. And then you have super conservative Kirk Cousins who's checking it down when he needs to be getting a first down, Yeah. And then you have Darnold, who's KOC's already done wonders, but he does get skittish and doesn't know what to do sometimes. And we see that. Well, now we have the guy KOC drafted. What is that mentorship and relationship going to be like? Are we going to see the confidence and the good decision-making and all of that we should expect to see him be able to do in picking out a draft pick? But I guess one question to end on, and just to touch again, they've addressed a lot of their holes. The offensive line, having a run game. They bring in Jordan Mason, and now that's paired with Aaron Jones, and it sure feels like they're going to do more of a run game. As of this morning, they get Adam Thielen to cover for Addison while he's out, and then man, what a package to have Jefferson, Addison, and Thielen and Naylor as wide receiver, plus Hawkinson, plus Josh Oliver has been doing fairly well in as a tight end in training camp. So that offense should look good. But a question I want to throw at you is, O'Connell comes from the Shanahan-McVay kind of tree, and the gist of that West Coast offense seems to be to pull up such schemes that the quarterback doesn't have to play off schedule. Every decision, every play is just simple. They come back to the huddle or the sideline feeling like, wow, that was easier than I expected it to be. Like, this is just simple. Do you think, and again, obviously McVay and O'Connell won a Super Bowl. Shanahan has yet to win a Super Bowl. He was offensive coordinator in a Super Bowl, gave up a huge, huge lead to the Patriots, where, again, if they had run the ball more, they probably win that Super Bowl. So Shanahan has some of his own. Now, he is a big, with the Niners, he's been pretty big on running the ball. He has McCaffrey. But I guess my question is it possible to set up such a good structure for your offense that you don't need a Superman? Because even when you look at the Eagles, part of why they win is they had their Superman was that defensive line pushing. They also had Barkley, who was so threatening that the Chiefs made it their sole goal to shut him down. And that's really the only thing the Chiefs did in that Super Bowl, was they shut down Barkley. And so I guess my question is there something problematic in what seems to be a great scheme for mediocre and QBs who maybe have a hard time breaking onto the scene? Is it actually somewhat problematic in big stake games when you need someone to rise to that Superman type posture? And I guess then the question is, can McCarthy be that? Or is there anybody? Obviously, I think Jefferson can be that in some ways, but you can only do so much as a wide receiver.
Restate the question again.
Is the scheme that seems to be easy for young or struggling QBs, is that part of the problem when it comes to playoff games and big stake games, when you're going to be seeing a ton of stuff that you didn't see before and you need kind of a Superman? Even if that Superman is not the QB, but you have such a threat in one area that they just totally try to shut that down, which opens up the playbook for other things.
Yeah, you cut out a little bit in some of that question, so I won't make you rephrase it again. But I think,
I mean, I can rephrase it. We could edit it out.
I do think that there is clearly like I think it comes down to rushing for me. Like all of those scheme, like the scheme is clearly good. Like the system is clearly good because Shanahan, McVay, all have had massive success with it, gone to multiple Super Bowls each. And O'Connell, is still a little bit to be known. I think LaFleur is also from that system.
Yeah.
I think Zach Taylor, the Bengals coach, was the predecessor to O'Connell for the Rams OC. He's gone to a Super Bowl, lost it. So like out of all of those guys, multiple Super Bowls, even beating the Chiefs, and the Bengals beating the Chiefs. And then McVay's the only one, and O'Connell are the only one who actually succeeded in winning a Super Bowl. So in some ways, I think the scheme is obviously good, and it's obviously like somewhat evergreen because it's, a track record of like 10 plus years, or whenever the Falcons went to the Super Bowl and lost it. I think to me, it's like if we can establish a good running game and then combine that with like this incredible defense that we keep hyping it up because I think it deserves hype. Like I think it's worth it. It improved last year over the year before, and I think it'll improve this year over the year before. So like combine those two things with maybe an adjustment of like hopefully just a better running game and a really solid O-line. I think they could do something with that. Whether or not this is the year, like there's part of me that's like, oh, all of those factors are only happening this year, and I don't know that we should necessarily plan for them because, like, next year Flores could be gone, and so then maybe the defense wouldn't be there. But the Eagles, I just think, I think the running game for me is the big thing because, like, the way the Eagles beat the Chiefs was a solid running game and their tush push. I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibility of like, who, like, does feel like the Vikings are mimicking the Eagles somewhat in their roster construction. Not necessarily in that they went out and got Barkley, but that they're really emphasizing the O-line and I was thinking about this the other day, and now I'm blanking on some of the other comparisons that I had, which is a little bit embarrassing. I, I can't think of some of the other comparisons I had, but like it's not a 1-for-1, but like they're very similar teams, I think, in the sense that they have just like a really well-rounded rosters and.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily saying that, I'm just talking structure. Like, I'm not necessarily saying that they actually run them the same. And so I think of the Vikings as the potential of being a sort of hybrid between that sort of McVay Shanahan system and like a sort of Chiefs Eagles roster construction.
Yeah. It definitely seems like O'Connell is, and that's one of the things we saw right away when he lets go of Ed Donahue. Is that his name? Donahue?
Donatel, I think.
Donatel. I think Donahue is a last name of some people in a town I grew up in. I don't know why that came out. Donatel. Like, he lets go of him, goes and gets Brian Flores, who's been I don't think anybody would undo or redo that decision. And then again, O'Connell making it very clear at the end of the season, we need to fix the interior of our O-line. And then they go out and do that. Like, he and Kwesi seemed to be, and even the fact we were WhatsApping about this last night, or was it a couple nights ago? But the fact that Kwesi is willing to move on from draft picks, I don't fully understand, and we don't have to get into this right now. We'll bring this episode to a close, but I don't fully understand the criticism of Kwesi. First of all, because it's actually not that abnormal that only a handful of picks from a year become anything substantial, meaningful for your team. But I also think it's a sign of them being able to recognize early, like, this guy is not a good fit for us. He's not going to be good here. It would be really frustrating if, like, what happens with the Minnesota Twins, those players would go on with other teams and do really well and so forth. But so far, we're not seeing that. I mean, the Eagles just waived Louis Sign, who was one of the Vikings first. Was that 22 or 23 when he was
22,
the number one pick?
Yeah.
And so in order to bring on Sam Howell, so obviously Sign Seen, however you say his name, is not turning out to be well. And so I think this leadership, this, what do you call it, administration regime, does well at recognizing when they've made mistakes and then they go and address them. And so it's exciting to see how things are going to be. I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl this year. I don't even really want that kind of expectation on McCarthy. I do have high hopes for them. I do want to see them win a playoff game, and we're going to get into all of that and more in our next episode. We're going to go through and we're going to predict the end of the season record for the Vikings as well as the whole NFC North. And then we're going to go through all of the week 1 games and predict the winners and losers of those. So if you enjoy these conversations with us, go ahead, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube, or we also have an audio version available. It should be on any place that you can get access to podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear, if you're Vikings fans, what are things you guys are looking for in the 2025 season? If you're not a Vikings fan, feel free to share your thoughts. We may or may not be in agreement with them, but that's what makes sports fun, is people don't always agree. So join us in the next episode, and we'll see where Christopher and I agree or disagree on what the outcome of the season will be.
Sounds good.